Rachel and I are having a great time talking to Angela Cheng, who's been part of our Cliburn family since 1989 when she was a semi-finalist in the Van Cliburn International Piano Competition that year. Angela, we are so happy you've joined us again. Rachel had a hard time getting here because of the weather.
Yes.
You've had a hard time getting here because of the weather. What's up with that?
I don't know. I thought that
Can't you make a couple of calls about it?
I wish I could.
So you had a horror story getting here, right?
Yeah, we got redirected at the last minute to Austin, and then it took about 5 hours to be rebooked. And then the flight finally into Dallas was quite scary, actually. People
really?
screamed on the plane.
Oh, wow.
And my iPad fell onto me. I was like, oh my, this is really bumpy. But we got in.
I'm glad I wasn't on that plane. I'm a nervous flyer myself. And then you had an interesting time getting here from Italy as well.
Similarly, I also got stranded in Newark. And
For 5 hours,
for
right?
5 hours, 2 canceled flights, and then a 6 a.m. flight today. So we made it, though. Yeah.
We're so glad to have you both here, and
Thank
so
you.
glad to have you both in the Cliburn family. Rachel is a newer addition to the Cliburn family. She was a contestant in the Cliburn in 2017.
Yeah.
I want to talk a little bit, Rachel and I are very curious about what you think of judging a competition for kids like this.
It's so exciting. This is not my first young junior competition. At my school, Oberlin Conservatory, we have the Cooper competition, which is also targeted the same age group, so it's just awesome to be able to hear these young kids play so maturely and so composed on that stage. I know at my age, I mean, when I was their age, there was no way I was that put together.
We were talking about that earlier. There was a young man at the end of this afternoon. It was Hao Wei-Lin.
Yes.
Hao Wei-Lin, who looked almost zen on the stage. He was so composed and so focused.
Yeah.
We felt it was just so interesting, and it got you to thinking, I think, about this sort of age continuum that we have here.
Yeah, I was curious, Angela. How do you feel when you're judging a 17-year-old who's about ready to go to college almost versus a 13 or 14-year-old who is very much in the beginning of their teens? I think every year is quite a big difference
Right.
when you're that young.
Right.
And when you're listening, do you take the age into consideration, or do you just kind of ignore that?
I guess that's not at the very forefront, but one can't help but consider that. I mean, if you see the same kind of spark as a 14-year-old, you're just excited for them, and you just wonder what potential and what can happen, in 3 years. But I try not to let that, shadow too much of my judging, because really, we're now looking for the best pianist that is here. And, whether you are 14 or 17, you're in the same pool, so, yeah.
You used a word that I think is so important and is so ineffable, also spark.
Yeah.
We're looking for that spark, and
Right.
you can't use words to define what the spark is,
Right.
or you'd have words and not a spark.
Right, right.
So, but do you think it's the kind of thing that you know it when you hear it, or you know it when you see it?
I think you do, and whether you're a musician or non-musician, you feel it. You hear it, you feel it, and it's instantaneous. You know somebody is speaking from the heart and is somehow connected to the music.
And I think Rachel and I've been talking about that too. That cannot be faked.
Oh no,
That
it's,
kind of
it's genuine,
playing right
or
from
not
the heart.
genuine.
Do you think your teaching gives you a sort of extra window into being able to assess talented kids? I mean, I've always thought with teachers that bring such an interesting and sort of needed perspective to competitions because you can see where a kid is now, but you can also sort of extrapolate where that kid might be. And I don't think people, those of us who don't do a lot of teaching,
Right.
have quite that sixth sense about students. I mean, with your own students, I bet you have it.
I'm not sure I do, but
Oh, I
but
bet
what
she
I am
probably
what
does.
I am amazed at is how much I've learned from my own teaching, having to kind of articulate what I'm trying to do for my students. It's just been incredibly helpful to me as a musician. And as far as what futures these kids have, I have no clue. And sometimes I'm completely surprised, either way pleasantly, like they've just grown way beyond my imagination, or the other way
Or
around.
the other way as well.
So, one never
There's
knows.
always a wild card there.
That's right.
Thank you so much for being
Sure,
with
my
us,
pleasure.
Angela.